Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, March 11th. Been quite a weather week, that's for sure. Hopefully some great discussion tonight, including the state of the state. Governor Kasich with some energetic words of what he hopes to accomplish in Ohio. We'll discuss it. Our population is dropping, that much we knew, but now the census confirms it for the local area. And what's going on with our gas prices and how can we all combat it? Those stories and more next on NewsNite. No teleprompter, few notes. Governor Kasich laid down the gauntlet early in his State of the State address.
If you've seen a lot of change in these first 7 weeks, you ain't seen nothing yet. We are going to transform this state.
You ain't seen nothing yet. So many ways to interpret that. Let's get right to it. Glad to have Steve Hoffman here with us this week from the Akron Beacon Journal. And also glad to welcome freelance contributor and journalist Jody Miller. No teleprompter, no notes, no sense with a comment like this? Is this because it's going to do nothing but get people thinking, what does he have in mind?
Well, I got to give the governor an A for enthusiasm. It's a quality that he had in it much evidence during the campaign. So he sort of captures this sense of optimism, wanting to move, change. He talked about change repeatedly during his speech. The problem with this message is that there was very little content behind it. And this is beginning to get, I know we're only 7 or 8 weeks into this project, but it's beginning to get to the point where people want a little meat on the bones here, I think. And we're going to see some Tuesday when he introduces the budget. We're going to see quite a lot. But there was very, very little in this speech that followed the traditional pattern of State of the State speeches, where you get the sense that speechwriters, which apparently the governor does not have one.
Saving money.
Well, he does it on his own. He
Right.
likes to do it on his own.
Usually there is some indication in the State of the State speech of specific policies and programs and initiatives. Here really we had, I think, Jody, pretty much a repackaging of a lot of the phrases we heard from the campaign trail.
Absolutely. And I did take some notes. Because I think there's almost a disconnect here between the vision that he is giving us and the reality of what's going to happen to all of us on Tuesday. I mean, so many times in his speech, his hot button words were change, growth, reform, transformation, renewal, restructuring, progress. But how you do progress is going to be laid out, I think, on Tuesday by him. And I don't know if progress can be done in a not painful way, because this is a state that, number one, his budget, we're facing an $8 billion deficit. He's going to have to cut things. He has said you can't cut your way and you can't tax your way to prosperity. But I don't know how he's going to get Ohio back to prosperity without massive cuts that are going to hurt a lot of people. My hope is that they don't hurt the less fortunate among us. And he has also said he's not going to tax in any way, shape, or form. So where is the money going to come from that is going to allow him to reform and restructure and make progress in the state? That's the question I think we're all looking forward to on Tuesday.
And he made it pretty clear. I mean, he's made it very clear, absolutely no tax increases here. And in fact, he wants to maintain, he wants to continue the tax cut plan, the income tax cut plan that was enacted in 2005. The last part of that income tax reduction was delayed to balance the current budget we're in. He was going to let that tax break go forward. So actually, and if we have an estate tax, if they eliminate the estate tax, actually we'll be cutting taxes. It's not just no new taxes, we'll actually be cutting taxes. So the question is, how do you move forward? He has certainly put out some ideas for restructuring that are long overdue, with the prison sentencing, with Medicaid reform, particularly the nursing home piece of it. You got to applaud him for these initiatives, but I will say that everything I hear indicates that those kind of structural reforms, which again are badly needed and will save money, are not going to do much in the short run to save money in this next 2-year budget cycle. They just can't be implemented fast enough. And the same with Senate Bill 5. You can't implement the provisions of Senate Bill 5 fast enough so that it really is going to help you balance the budget in the short run. So the one other point I'd like to make about, there's some, when you scratch below the surface sometimes in the governor's remarks, you get these interesting collisions of ideas, which he never quite explains. My favorite, and the editor of the editorial page, Michael Douglas, was in Columbus for the speech, and he picked up on this right away, is, here's a guy that will stand there and tell you how wonderful it is that they saved American greetings. And that is a good thing. I mean, we need to retain the companies we have. Then a few minutes later, he's talking about, we can't have this corporate welfare. And so, okay, but how does this really all fit together? Again, no clue.
Right. The dichotomy here is, okay, he talks about reforming Medicaid and working in terms of early birth rates and more prenatal care. How do you do that without the money for the programs to bring prenatal care to the people who need it? He talks about school reform and accountability. But if you give people more choice, that costs money. So I applaud his enthusiasm. I applaud his energy. I like the fact that he didn't use a teleprompter, that he just was kind of off the cuff. But boy, you can't run state government off the cuff.
And while you mention education, I want folks to get a chance to listen to exactly what he had to say about education, which he spent a great deal of time on.
Education, K through 12 and post-secondary, of course, it's critical to our economic future. But I want to tell you, more choice, more accountability, more dollars in the classroom instead of bureaucracy will improve our schools. And we are going to have a significant reform agenda.
So he comes out of education and he wants to talk about choice, and he wants to talk about, these are simple buzzwords that we would hear any politician say. And no politician is going to say they're not for a better education. Is he guilty of exactly what he criticized Governor Strickland for during the campaign, which is a lot of words and not a lot of real action to make those things come to life?
Well, the education piece of this, the school choice part of this is the debate we've been having. It's like the school funding debate. I mean, this is like a constant. So again, this is nothing new. The idea of expanding school choice. Now, he did seize upon the Kelly Williams Bolar case, that woman or this woman from Akron. He didn't even use her name. But you can see that he's trying to leverage that into a school choice issue. He did say this was about safety. He got that part of it right. But then he quickly launched into this. And there are Republicans, especially some of the newly elected House members, Christina Regner from Hudson being one of them, who are very, very adamant, very pro-choice. They would like to open up school choice in the broadest possible way. And you just wonder, as Jody says, part of the school choice thing means you have duplicate. When you have competition, you have to have, in essence, kind of duplicate structures. And so this adds more to the administrative costs, takes money away from public schools. And I think the concern on the part of educators in the public sector is if you pull some kids out of a classroom here, a classroom there, and they go to a charter school or private school, okay, fine. But the overhead it takes to run that public school system doesn't change very much. If you pull a kid out here or there, you can't shut down a classroom. You can't get rid of a teacher. You still have to have a principal. So it causes real damage. With you know what I'm saying? It's just it's not as easy as he makes it sound.
Right. And when you're talking about charter schools and choice, the criticism that I have had with those is that they are not held to the same accountability standards necessarily as the public schools are. So at what cost? You can put a charter school into any building, but if they are not held accountable to the same standards that public schools are they doing a disservice to our student population? The other thing about the education aspect of this that I would like to bring up is obviously the cost of higher education in this state, and what the budget is going to do to higher education. Because the governor also talked about, here again is that dichotomy, entrepreneurship. We have to foster entrepreneurship and get our young people to be creative and to develop new ideas and to invent things and to bring progress and to stay in the state. I'm sorry, it's nice to have the words, but the reality is, how do you do that? And I don't know that his budget is going to tell us much about that.
And Ohio has had, and will continue to have into the foreseeable future, not that I'm arguing that everyone should go to college, but we have a very low percentage of our adult population with a college degree or higher, and I don't see how we're going to improve access. Now, he's talking about charter universities. Well, no one's sure exactly what that means. Lester Lefton at Kent State University is all excited. He's going to repitch this building plan. Well, you got to remember, his idea is based on adding a fee.
Right. Well, hold that thought. I want to continue this conversation now as we move it to the internet, to newsnight.net.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
It is very much a numbers game when the census comes out, and not surprisingly, the city of Akron and many other local communities have seen a drop. Joining us now is Phil Trexler from the Akron Beacon Journal to hopefully add a little bit of context to all of this. And Steve, you wrote about the census this week. I don't think this surprises anybody that we dropped, but what does it mean in the big picture?
It seems like a psychological drop too. Cleveland's dipping, to its lowest figure since 1900. Akron's underneath the magical 200,000. The Falls are under the 50,000 mark. There's a psychological as well as a financial interest here, and Steve talked about the funding issue for the Falls and Akron going under the magical 200,000 mark, and there's appeals that are being planned here, but it's devastating to the cities that the population keeps dwindling now. You're losing, not only are you losing citizens, you're losing taxpayers, and it's certainly critical to the cities to try to get that back and to bring the cities back to where they were. And the bleeding has to stop somewhere, and it's up to the leaders in the community to try to find a way to stop it.
Just surprised by any of these numbers?
Not really. I mean, I think this is a continuation of a trend, obviously, that we've seen for decades. And the sad thing for Northeast Ohio is that the region as a whole lost population slightly. I think the region was like 2% down. So what we've done basically is take roughly the same number of people and spread them out even more thinly throughout the region. And this is a fairly costly proposition in terms of infrastructure. And the cities already have the infrastructure in place. But now, we're pushing everything out farther and farther. Now we're having growth in really the second ring, the outer ring suburbs. Some of the inner ring suburbs are starting to lose population as well. So we've got this growth that's going farther and farther out. And the point that I think our story mentioned Macedonia, the problems they had in Macedonia, is there is no way low-density residential development pays for itself. It is always a drain on services. And so in Macedonia, they were doing pretty well because they had some business and industry. Well, the recession hit, their income tax revenue went in the tank because they lost jobs, and they had to have a tax hike, an income tax hike, to keep going. Now, this is a fast-growing suburban area, but the residential growth is not sufficient. So to me, this is a chance to rethink how we do growth and development, to continue these initiatives to try to revitalize cities, as Phil is mentioning, and to look to have better cooperation among units of local government so we don't have ridiculous, like this Montrose issue in Montrose with the Walmart. We keep sprawling out farther, for what?
Well, the old American dream was, 20 acres and a mule, something like that. The whole idea was to get your own piece of the world. So I don't think it's surprising that people are moving out. Question is, how do we create enough incentives to keep them living in the major cities that have so much at stake with their population?
Right. Well, it's all about the jobs, too. I mean, let's look at we're talking from 2000 to now. You're looking at, the Great Recession. You're looking at a lot of job losses. People, the foreclosure crisis. These all attribute in some fashion to the issue. And you don't bring jobs back to this area, you're not going to bring people back here. And it's all about creating, new ideas and businesses to help spur development, spur the growth, and attract people here. I mean, certainly look outside. The weather's not going to attract anybody, but it's all about the jobs. And we're losing jobs and we're losing people. That's not surprising.
Yeah, I think it's a package, and you've seen it in Akron, especially. You try to get a package together to revitalize neighborhoods. Akron and other cities have started to demolish dilapidated homes and then start rebuilding with newer construction. So you try to revitalize neighborhoods. You try to have economic incentives to attract business. You try to. The schools are a big part of this. We've heard Frank Jackson up in Cleveland talk about the school system. That Cleveland is really kind of stuck in its development efforts without dramatic improvements in its school system. So all these pieces fit together, and it's. It's a struggle. I mean, this is. Jackson talked about the foreclosure crisis. Yes, that was a hit. Yes, the recession was a hit. But take that off the table. We still have had for decades a population loss. And so the point is you've got to continue to try to stop this. I don't know if you can reverse it, but to stop the bleeding, if you will, and try to stabilize these neighborhoods, stabilize these cities. Cities generate jobs in the long term. They attract immigrants. They are the engines in our society traditionally of growth and revitalization, and you can't just walk away. It's not good to just walk away from the urban centers of Northeast Ohio and say, oh, well, it was fun while it lasted.
Are we at a point, though, where the cities can't do it all on their own? The governor mentioned this week that a third of all college graduates in Ohio flee the state. He didn't say flee, but in essence, they're going for, as you mentioned, Phil, jobs. What can the county level, the state level, the federal level do to help cities in the Midwest who are already fighting a tougher climate to attract people to stay?
Well, there are traditional programs. We'll see what Congress does. I mean, we're in a budget-cutting mood, it seems, everywhere. But I like the idea, I've always liked the idea of targeted incentives to revitalize certain urban neighborhoods. We've had a long tradition going back to community development block grants and I think you do get bang for the buck out of those programs. And it is an investment. It does take tax support to do it, but I don't think in this case you have to lay the groundwork for the entrepreneurs. You have to lay the groundwork for the private sector to come in. They're not going to come into a blighted neighborhood and tackle the whole thing on their own. It's too risky.
Do you believe Akron has done that, though, with some of its neighborhoods it's remade?
Absolutely. I think, you hear from the dissidents that we haven't done enough in the neighborhoods, and there's just very, very little evidence of that over the years. The city has really, I think, tried pretty hard in a lot of neighborhoods to turn things around. But
part of the problem, too, you touch on the school issue. Your largest cities have the worst school systems, but there's also the safety factor. That people need to feel secure in their homes, and the dissidents will talk about that the crime levels in the inner cities are just continuing to grow. The violent crime continues to grow. The statistics show that violent crime is up in Akron, and it's the same way in any major urban area. So the people need to feel safe in their homes, but they also need to have schools that are attractive and neighborhoods that are attractive. And while the city does continue to invest in these, I mean, there's still a societal, social issue that exists in the cities.
That brings us back to the beginning of increasing safety takes money.
Yeah.
Making better education takes money. We don't have extra money.
No. I mean, these are bad times to try to be rebuilding your population. Right, we're cutting back instead of investing, and it's a difficult challenge.
Indeed it is. And I go back to my regionalization mantra. I mean, you have to be smart at all these different things, but take policing, for example. It's ridiculous that Summit County has so many small police departments. And so how do you get better bang for your buck? How do you get better law enforcement, more efficient law enforcement? You begin to centralize beyond just the dispatching function. You begin to think about collapsing some of these, having small departments, having the sheriff take a greater role. And what that does is it takes money from the administrative overhead and pushes it down so that you actually have more people on the street.
And we'll continue to talk about those topics in the days to come here on NewsNight.
On NewsNight.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNight.net.
I want to thank Steve Hoffman for his participation this week, and you can read our behind-the-scenes blog, learn more about what goes on with the show and our thoughts on NewsNight.net. Glad to re-welcome Jody Miller back to the panel. And I mentioned at the top of the broadcast we're going to talk about gas prices because that's certainly something that's affecting everybody. Are we going to see $4 a gallon, and how in the world can we get through this summer again with so many other financial problems if the gas goes up that high?
I don't know. But yes, I think we might very well see $4 a gallon gas. And every time I turn around, every time I drive by a gas station, the price has gone up. And I don't, we're just faced with a situation where, whatever the market will bear, I think is going to be the equation here that we're going to deal with. And what you're going to have to do is you're just going to have to make fewer trips, shorter trips, make sure that you decide where you're going to go. There won't be a whole lot of traveling, I don't think, because if it's going to be in the car. And gas prices not only affect traveling car-wise, but look at the airfares that have gone up recently, because the airlines have to, pay the kind of prices. So I don't know if there's any end in sight, but I think I would prophesize that the prices are going up.
The effects are just. I mean, there was a hike this morning, 10, 15 cents a gallon, and it's just. Yeah, you're probably going to see $4 a gallon, but the effects, the trickle down is just, awful on an already devastated economy. When the snow goes away, we're going to have to patch our potholes, and the asphalt is oil based, and then the cost of that's going to go up. Your food's going to go up. Everything in our economy is strictly based on oil. And the trickle down is just going to be devastating, and nothing that we need. And it's out of our hands, it's out of our control, and you just grin and bear it.
Yeah, cities are paying for police cars with their fuel all day. Schools are paying for school buses. I mean, there's no entity that's not touched by this, is there?
Exactly.
Your home, sometimes you're heating your home with the oil, or your car. It takes up a big chunk of your budget to fill up your vehicle, and we all need it, and we all have to pay it. There's no choice there, and it's just unfortunate we're still in this situation where we're so reliant on oil, and it's 2011.
Yeah. And 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we were warned, we need to do something. We need to plan ahead. We need to not become so based on this kind of fuel, particularly when we get so much of it from the Middle East. And, there's talk in Washington, I think there's a faction that would like the government to open up the oil reserves and to tap into those. They're coming down on Obama right now, saying we need more drilling to provide more of a supply. We need to be more self-reliant, and I don't know that there's ever going to be an end in sight.
Yeah. We went through this in 2008, I think 2009, when it hit $4, and it came back down, and
I had a chance to talk to the Meals on Wheels folks from Stark County this week, and they've seen their cost of their food go up because the fuel costs are getting trickled down, so they're losing money that way. And then on the back end, their drivers, their volunteers can't keep volunteering because they can't afford to deliver it.
Right.
So now they're paying money to have the food delivered, and you see that trickle down, as you mentioned, all the way down to the individual little old lady who just wants her lunch delivered.
And also your discretionary spending. If you take the family budget, money that's left over that you might use to go, out to dinner or out to a movie or something like that, that's money's not there because you spent that excess going to, into your tank. So yeah, it just
what do we do?
Get you coming and going.
We have a few minutes left. We want to talk about a story that dominated the national airwaves in the middle of the week. Jim Tressel in Ohio State. Everyone in Columbus jaw dropped. It was tough enough that 5 of the players had been caught up in this scandal, but Jim Tressel is a kind of a guy that is beyond reproach, isn't he?
That's what made it so shocking, is that the vest is that guy. He's that uncle that you can trust, and has the reputation of doing things by the book. And it's just it looks bad for him. It looks bad for Ohio State. You don't expect those types of bad decisions to be made by someone of his stature, of his intelligence. And he's certainly, his supporters came out in full strength this week, but it's his actions and conduct were really indefensible, and I think that you're going to see a harsher punishment come out from the NCAA, and I think also too it was unfortunate some of the comments that Gordon Gee made at the press conference. Those were disappointing, and it really makes you wonder who's running the show down there in Columbus, and perhaps it puts a highlight on the emphasis that we put on athletics at the college level is just it's out of control.
Well, and I was going to disagree with you that I think Jim Tressel is a paragon of integrity, because he came from Youngstown, and there was a situation in Youngstown when he was football coach there, if I'm not mistaken, that had some ramifications. Okay, this is not the first time at Ohio State that some of his players have been caught up in this kind of thing, and that he has not acted maybe in a fashion that you would hope that he would act. My disappointment is that, first of all, he knew about this in April. He did nothing about it. He held it close to the vest, pun intended. so that I think not that he could protect the confidentiality of the sources, but so that he would have a better team, so he could field
absolutely.
a good football team this fall.
It was about wins and losses.
And it was about wins and losses, and I think that for the preeminent university in this state to come down and support a man who does not show the degree of integrity that I think should be shown is very disappointing to me, because I think they are emphasizing, as you said, sports, athletics, and winning, but at what cost? At a cost of integrity. And I don't think that's right. That's not the message I would want to send to athletes.
To his defense, we've only got about a minute here. He didn't impede the investigation. He didn't lie to anybody.
But he didn't tell anyone.
Anybody.
Right.
He didn't tell
and
anybody.
And he lied in September. In September, he had the opportunity when he signs that affidavit saying all my players are clean. He lied. He knew that his players were in trouble back then.
He knew they were being investigated.
Well, he knew they had some issues back then, and apparently didn't tell anyone. And he kept this to himself. And he made some mistakes there. And
even in December, when this first came out, he didn't come forward with the information that he had known about it.
Right.
So, I mean, I think he's just covering his butt at this point.
And to say he was doing this to protect the kids, I think is just disingenuous. It was about the wins and losses. You don't want to go through. He knew the guys would be ineligible. And do you want to go through those games without your star quarterback?
Nobody is going to deny that wins and losses play a big part in every one of
his
decisions.
He did.
But when you look at what some other coaches have done, Rick Pitino, a successful basketball coach, caught up in a sex scandal with a waitress, didn't lose his job. We look what happened at USC, where they had to give it back the Heisman Trophy, and other things. Where does this weigh? We're out of time, but we'll get back to that again. Jody, Phil, and Steve as well, thank you so much. We'll see you next Friday, and hopefully every Friday right here for NewsNite. Good night, everybody.